There's some facts that I'm going to simplify. I'm a big simplifier. Did you know, other than the people that live on the Waterway, we get 4,000 boats coming on our Waterway every season? Amazing, isn't it? Okay. Did you know that you pay, as riparian owners, 28% higher taxes than the people that don't live on the Waterway? Do you realize what you give to the town or village of Waterford in your taxes? What you give to the state? 28% higher. For that, you deserve clean water, navigable water, and that's what this district is all about. I think you will see that the district in the past 7 months has expanded on trial and error and trying different things to help you solve the problems that you have. Now I'm going to tell you a really interesting fact. 12 years ago, we formed this district. Since that 12 years, because the silt adds at 1/2 inch per year, we have had 7 inches of silt added while the district has been formed. That's as close, and I have all these wonderful scientists and physics majors and so on giving me this information. What's going to happen if we do nothing? People in Waterford, they're going to pick up your 28%. Is your property value going to go down? Sure is it. Are you going to be able to show your house, sell your house, be proud of your house, take your boats out, go to the bay, go on the water? No, 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 no. It's going to close up. So when you look at this presentation, your choice is to do something or do nothing. And if you vote to do nothing, that's what's going to happen. Nobody's making it up. Nobody's making up these figures. Our board is available for any questions that you might have. But these are facts that we don't feel everybody's aware of. Second thing is, the reason we held this meeting today is we want the rumors to stop. We want all the conversation when you get your hair cut, when you go out for dinner, when you meet your friends on the boats, to stop the rumors. This district is trying to be as open and transparent. I think if you check Facebook, the answers are almost instantaneously. When you go to our website, which is terrific now, you can ask questions there. They're answered within hours. Don't listen to all those rumors. Today, you're getting the facts. So when you walk out of this room, take the facts and share them with your neighbor. Whatever your opinion might be, these are the facts. And I am so glad that all of you came out this morning to hear the facts and stop the rumors. Okay, this is how it's going to work. Our meeting, there was an agenda posted, but it's a simple agenda, so I'm going to go over it with you. Brian and Jeff are here from GRAFE. GRAFE is our engineering firm. They've done all the studies on what we can do. They're working with the DNR. They will have a presentation. You were all given 2 cards when you walked in. There will be absolutely, positively no questions from the floor. Can't raise your hand and be acknowledged. I will not do that. But you are able to write any question down that you might have. We're going to allow 20 to 25 minutes because it's a beautiful day and I don't want to keep you here. I want you to get out on the water. 20 minutes to answer the questions, to ask the questions, to answer the questions. After that, our finance chairman is going to give you the options on the funding for the project. You have a second card. If you have a question for Gary, you'll write that question down. The girls will pick them up. We'll have girls reading the questions and they will ask them. Okay? Our board members are all here today, so if we don't get your question in time or you have another question that's unrelated to the 2 topics, they're here to answer it. I'm going to introduce very quickly. Where's Mike? There he is. Stand up, Mike. This is Mike Waghorn. Mike is our chairman of the Aquatic Plant Control. So any questions you have for Mike, Mike will not be addressing anybody today, but afterwards he's here. Please address them to Mike. Ted Dursey is our treasurer. Don Barron is our appointment from Racine County. He is on the ESR, which means Ecosystem Restoration, or the Dredging Committee, for lack of a better word. Paul Kling is down here. He's on Special Projects. That means runoff that's going into the lake that's causing more of it. And Gary is chairman of that committee with Paul. Who did I miss? Andre. Andre has a doctorate in physics. Now, I love Andre to death. He's one of our board members. But if I didn't explain the silk increase, he's the guy you want to see. He has all the answers. Be prepared for a very methodical
scientific
answer. But he's the one. Every email for every board member is on our website. If you have a question, ask them. Ask the right person. As chairman, any question can be directed to me, and I will forward it on to the appropriate person. Okay, with that being said, John, where's John Bjork? John Bjork has maps. He already told me put this in there. They're wonderful maps to show the fishing areas and so on of the waterway back here if you want it.
$5.
Okay, $5.
Boy, John.
Okay, you're going to have, I'm going to repeat this so everybody knows. Brian and Jeff are going to give their presentation. You fill out your questions, they'll be addressed. Then we move to the funding part. Fill out your questions. They will answer them, have them addressed. Thank you so much to each and every one of you for coming out this morning. No matter what your opinion is, it shows you're interested in our waterway. So with that, I'm going to introduce Brian. Brian Schneider and Jeff Parrish over here. I can't remember their titles, so they're going to tell you what their titles are. Thank you again.
All right. Can everybody hear me now? All right. What I want to do this morning is provide a framework for what we're doing here. And if you want to get into more detail, if we don't answer your questions on the hard questions, Jeff and I will stick around after the meeting. We'll try to answer more detailed questions. Our goal with this whole project is to restore, reestablish navigation in the main channels and to provide access to the main channel. And one way to look at the whole project is to divide it into 3 steps. One, the first step is to dredge, and that's to get the sediment out of the waterway. Next step is once you get the sediment out of the waterway, you have to get the water out of the sediment. You can think about taking a shovel of sand on the beach and putting it in a bucket. And after a while, the sediment settles to the bottom and you just have water left. And that's what that step's all about. The final step is once we get the water out of the sediment, we have to find a place to put that dried up sediment. And that's not a small task. Next slide, please. This shows the channels that will be dredged. There's the main channel on access, and up in this area, we're looking at creating a sediment trap so that if the water flows in from the north, the sediment can settle out and it'll make this project last longer. Next slide, please. This is a typical cross-section. I wanted to show this to give you some idea that it's not just a matter of scooping out a rectangular channel. The sediment is somewhat soupy. So what we do to create a 100-foot wide channel is we dredge out a channel that's about 170 feet wide. And when we do that, the soupy sediment will flow back and we'll be left with a channel that's about 100 feet wide, more or less. The total amount of material we estimate to be dredged is about 480,000 cubic yards. That's a lot of material. Next slide. And I wanted to show you here some of the methods we use to get the water out of the sediment. So we got the sediment out of the river now. There are a couple ways to get the water out of the sediment. The first method I alluded to is like taking a shovel full of wet sand and putting it in a bucket. If you do that at home, you can watch it for a while. and slowly all the sand settles to the bottom and you get clear water on top of the bucket. That's what a settling pond does. That's one of the most economical ways to dewater the sediment. So this is a basic cost method comparison here. Another method of dewatering sediment is you use geotextile tubes. And basically what that is, it's pumping the sediment into a bag, and the bag has very fine pores in it. The water leaks out the pores, and the sediment builds up in the bag. You need a lot of bags to do that, and it takes a lot of pressure. So that method costs a bit more than a settling pond. And finally, you can get the water out of the sediment using mechanical methods, and that's basically squeezing it or putting it into a centrifuge or something like that. That gets to be most expensive. So as you can see, if you go from settling pond with mechanical methods, in general, the costs go up. Next slide. Another issue with dewatering, when you pull the wet sediment out of the river, you want to dewater it as close to the river as possible because it gets more expensive as you push it away from the river or transport it away from the river while it's wet. So this is a simple graph illustrating that. As the distance from the river increases, generally the cost goes up too. So our approach, taking this into consideration, we want to try to use settling pond methods and do it as close to the river as possible. Next slide, please. After we dewater, third step is distribute for beneficial use. If we can, one of the cheapest things we can do is use this material for fill on the dewatering sites. That way we don't have to transport it at all. Next option is we can use the sand and gravel site for reclamation. Sand and gravel pits are required to restore the area of the pit when they're done mining. So this material can be used for that benefit. The material can also be used as a farm amendment. It has nutrients in it, and it's good topsoil once it's dewatered. And it can also be used for topsoil for commercial, industrial, and highway use. So what we want to try to do here in this step is identify large users within close proximity to the project. Close because we don't want to truck it a long way. Next slide, please. This is the permit scenario we're looking at now. And I call it the permit scenario because this is the way we want to approach the application to the DNR for them to review to get the permit for the project. The dredging step is primarily hydraulic methods. That's basically hydraulic dredging is, you can think of drinking a milkshake with a straw. You have a 10-inch diameter straw in a sense that sucks the sediment out of the water and pumps it to your dewatering site. We can use some mechanical methods as well, which basically means a backhoe. Dewatering sites. We have 3 or more DNR properties we're looking at, which I'll show you, and 2 private sites, which I'm not going to show. And then as far as distribution goes, we're hoping to distribute some of the dewatered sediment at the dewatering sites themselves. And then we have a couple additional private sites and a county site we're looking at to take the material. Next slide, please. Here are the 2 DNR sites. We have a couple locations up here for dewatering, and then over here, and the next slide will show those in more detail. We'll look at location A first. This has 2 sites, dewatering sites A1 and A2 we'll call them. The advantages here, getting back to what I was describing earlier, these are both close to the river. Low distribution costs because we're going to keep the material here on site. We're not going to truck it away after it's dewatered. We do have some regulatory limitations here, which makes this challenging. And there's some capacity limitations. This one we're actually filling in the bay. And this has probably the most serious regulatory limitations. And then over here, we're going to dig out basically a pit and fill it in with the sediment and then create an upland prairie. Our constraints here are we have wetlands. We really can't do anything if there's wetlands. You can't really see them on the map, but suffice it to say, the shape of this is dictated by the wetlands around it and also oak savanna. So we have to stay out of those areas. The next step here is to do some soil borings and see what kind of material we have lying underneath, and that'll help us know how to construct the pit. Next slide, please. This is Site B. These are larger sites, a little further from the river. This shows how we would pump the sediment to these sites along this corridor. And here it's the same kind of approach. We would construct dewatering cells here, generally in this area and this area. And here we dewater the material, and we create upland prairies here too. We raise the elevation on these sites 3-4 feet if we can, maybe a little bit less. And the long-term plan here, and we've been discussing with the DNR, is to create an oak savanna up here and some upland prairies. A lot of the material here, though, we would stockpile and we'd have to distribute to other sites, such as sand and gravel pits, or make available for use on commercial sites. Next step here again is to do some soil borings, which we have scheduled. Next slide, please. So in summary, the permit application will be based on completion of the soil borings and that scenario I kind of laid out. The dewatering sites are primarily using dewatering and using cells and settling. The estimated project budget under the current scenario for the sediment dredging, dewatering, and distribution is a range right now, because there's a lot of uncertainties and things undecided, but we're estimating it to be between $8.4 and about $10.4 million. Okay?
Okay.
So now we'll take questions on cards, right?
I have Stephanie over there, Margaret on this side. Collect any questions that you might have.
Yeah, pass them down.
I will tell you that the Racine Journal-Times is interested in running a story, and so we're recording this meeting. So I'm under law to tell you that you're being recorded. If you say anything or do anything, it will be recorded. So it'll also be put on our website for those anybody who cannot attend the meeting this morning.
Anybody else?
Questions?
Okay.
You're going to have to ask the technical. I think right now it's audio. But okay, you want to give them to Stephanie is, I didn't introduce Stephanie. Stephanie is the one that's doing all the clean boats and clean waters. Stephanie, can I have your attention, please? Stephanie worked for a year and got a grant. It's a 3-year grant for $60,000 to help us support funding of the aquatic plants. So a big thank you. She worked a year on that grant. Okay.
So first question, is the proposed dredging modeled after any other successful dredging project?
Yes, the dewatering cell they spoke about, the hydraulic dredging method.
Here, Brian.
The dredging method, the hydraulic dredging, and the dewatering cells are used on a regular basis at the Fox Waterway Agency in Illinois.
Okay, how long will this take?
That'll depend on the contractor, likely about 3 years.
Can you sell sediment like Illinois does?
Probably be able to. We're still going through that with the DNR. We won't be able to put it in bags and sell it like that, but we may be able to sell it as a topsoil, but that's still under discussion.
Have you considered lowering the ice during winter to increase velocity washing on the main channel?
Not related. What's that?
Could you repeat the question, please?
You know what? Yeah, can you come over by the mic?
There's more mics here.
Or here?
Sit down here.
Hey, Stephanie, you could use
Stephanie, you wanna-
Okay.
Can you hear me? No? Things on? There we go.
This one is.
Can boats drive through sediment trap?
Boats can drive through a sediment trap. A sediment trap is just basically a deeper portion of the water, so it's probably better that boats drive through that than other areas, because shallow areas are going to stir up the sediment. The sediment trap is going to be one of the deepest areas. Eventually, though, it will fill up, but that'll take a long time.
Will the water line recede from current position due to dredging?
No.
No, it's just, it's an emphatic no.
It's a yes, no.
Do you have anything to add to that? It might for other reasons, but not for that.
Okay, how far can the material be pumped with not a booster?
We're thinking about, and it depends on the elevation of the endpoint, probably about 1.5 miles or so of the type of material we have. If you're going further uphill with it, that would be less. But that would be a conservative estimate.
Okay, what is the estimated cost per yard? And add to that question, how many yards of sediment?
There's about 480,000 yards of sediment. And off the top of my head, the price per yard will depend on the site where we're dewatering. But I think it comes in the area of between $15 and $20 a yard, roughly, all said and done.
Okay, are there any contaminants in the sediment?
We analyzed 65 samples, and it was reviewed with the DNR. There were low levels of metal, nothing above background levels, and there are some nutrients in the material, but not contaminants that would require us to handle it in any special way.
Have you considered opening the dam and releasing the impoundment seasonally, November through April, to allow sediment to drain naturally?
We haven't looked into that in detail. There would be some issues with that because the sediment builds up behind the dam. So, Jeff, I don't know. Comments on that?
I don't know who asked that question, but if they want to see me after the meeting, I have information. We have looked at that separate from the ESR, but whoever it is, I'd be happy to take that up.
So see Mike after the meeting. You want to answer to that question?
Well, maybe everybody else wants to.
It's not the dredging.
It's not, okay.
Because we're all here. This has been termed by the DNR as a winter drawdown. It's actually in our lake management plan. It was looked at by Sewer Pack. We have investigated it with the DNR. The DNR does not support it. We have to start it too early in the season. It would impact the hunters and the duck hunters in the season. It impacts the amphibians when they burrow into the mud. So the DNR is definitely against it. And then, as Graves told us, this doesn't get rid of the sediment. The sediment's still there. It impacts it a little bit, but it is not a answer to removing it. So we have looked at this. It's in our plan. We've been through it with the DNR, and we've actually ruled it out.
Thank you.
Good job.
Okay, so this is, I guess, a fact. This is a fact. A 10-inch dredge can't pump more than 1,500 feet. I guess the question is that an accurate fact?
And does that limit the speed of it, I guess? I don't know.
You can get booster pumps to go further, and a number of dredging contractors we've talked to about this have given us ranges of distances, and 1.5 miles is something all of them said they could do.
How does the dredging project address the more imminent problem of weeds, which inhibits our use of the waterway?
Have you considered?
Run that by me again.
How does the dredging project address the more imminent problem of weeds, which inhibits our use of the waterway? So I guess how will the dredging affect our aquatic plant growth?
Now, Jeff, if you want to answer that one. we'll take out material, and generally the material we'll take out has higher nutrient content than underlying material. We've sampled both material above and below. So there'll be a little bit less nutrients in the waterway after we remove the material. So generally, there'll be less of the nutrient load, and it'll help with the weeds. Anything else?
Does the distance, so the sun, so you get, it's deeper now, so the sun can't get to the weeds as well? Does that make a difference generally? It'll help, but...
It'll help a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah.
It'll help your engines.
Yeah.
This homeowner's concern is that each time you add a booster pump, the cost goes up 50%. Is that true?
The cost does go up when you add a booster pump, and that's why we try to keep the dewatering sites as close to the waterway as we can. The limitation we have is, the sites we look at that are close to the waterway generally have environmental features that make them hard to work with, like wetlands. And that's one of the constraints I pointed out in the A sites that the DNR has.
How long before it will fill in again?
We have a range of estimates for that. It depends where you are, but Jeff, we're looking at that. If you want to take that question.
There have been different estimates for the rate of infill from 0.6 inches per year to 0.5 to 0.3. It really depends on if you're looking at the main channel or a bay that's weedy, as you can imagine. A bay where there's a lot of boat traffic and there are a lot of weeds, the boats stir up the material, and then the material goes to where the weeds are, which slow the water down and let it settle faster. So there'll be some areas where there are higher accumulation rates. But if we're looking at waters that are generally 2 feet deep, dredging them to 5 feet deep, and you imagine that the rate is on the order of a third, 0.3 to 0.5 inches per year, you're talking about something like 30 to 60 years for the material to fill that area back in, just that level. In part, the answer is it depends on where you're evaluating.
Can a boat cross a pipe from dredging?
No. What we do is you lay the pipe in the waterway, and there's a system of buoys or warnings and things that you lay out, and you just have to go around the pipe.
Okay, this is a few questions here. How deep will the channel be in feet? How far out from channel will dredging go? Where does the project start on the waterway?
The channel will be 5 feet deep. Next project.
How far out from the channel will dredging go?
Can you go to the cross-section slide, please? It's the third one. Yeah.
There.
I think this will answer that question. This is a 100-foot wide channel here, and we estimate that to get a 100-foot wide channel, you would dredge about 170-foot width. Next part of that?
Where does the project start? Where do you start?
It would likely start on the north end, but depending on what the contractor wants to do and where our sites are, they may work both ends at once.
There's a map if somebody wants to.
Yeah. Could start up here, but a contractor may work here and down here at the same time. We want to leave the contractor that flexibility.
And here's my question. What about a maintenance plan? What's required after dredging? Ongoing?
Well, one part of that would be maintenance dredging. There'd be areas that you didn't get in the original dredging, and several years later there may be areas you want to dredge out deeper. So that'd be one aspect of it. Continue the weed program, certainly.
Okay, we only have time for 2 more questions, so let's see. You got a good? Are you going to take the top
Mud.
or deeper to the dense mud?
Jeff,
The DNR has set a limit of dredging to 5 feet or hard pan. So I guess if I understand the question.
Whichever comes first.
The dredging will be whatever is above hard pan to a maximum depth of 5 feet. Okay.
This is a particular question about Buena Park. Let's see, Buena Park there's no sand. It is silt and mud. How do you want to drain that?
We're
Okay, that won't answer
we're not draining it, but you mean dredge it?
The material that we sampled,
Dredge.
40-some samples, including a number in Buena Lake, and we had them analyzed for sand, silt, clay content, and we described them. And the material in Buena Lake did have fine sand and silt and clay, but it also has a lot of fibrous organic material, so it's a mixture of fibrous organic material from plants and also fine sand. And silt is just even finer than sand, and clay, which is the finest of all. But it's similar to material elsewhere. It can dewater through all the methods that Brian was talking about earlier.
If your question didn't get answered or asked, it's either, we have a bunch of them are about funding, and our next speaker is going to be speaking about funding, so we're going to hold those questions until after his presentation, so please know we're not ignoring those questions. There were also some questions about weed management, and this meeting is about the dredging project, so we haven't asked those. After the meeting, see Stephanie and or Mike and ask your questions of him. We don't want to ignore the question, but we don't want to sidetrack the meeting. We want to stick to the dredging project, okay?
All right, thank you.
Okay, now to the good part. The good part, don't take that personally. Now you all want to know about money. And so we have Gary Hansen here, who's finance chairman of this project. Gary is a retired attorney who lives on Island View Bay. Don't forget, when you're looking at that, when you're listening to Gary, you all have friends that live on the Waterway. And there's some areas that are just so bad. The district is aware of it. And when you look at this, you have to look at it as a project in its entirety, not just your space, because you take your boat out, your property value is based on the entire watershed. So Gary, you're on.
This is fairly complicated stuff, detailed stuff, so I'm going to be reading part of it. I don't think I'm not paying attention to my audience. It's been determined that the dredging is going to cost between $8.4 million and $10.4 million. So how are we going to pay for it? And one thing I want to point out, the project, as Brian said, it's a 3-year plus project. So the money's not going to be all spent in year one. It doesn't have to all be raised in year one as well. It's going to extend over a period of time. We have 3 ways that we can pay for it. In 1984, the Wisconsin legislature and the governor of the state then enacted the law that I'm going to call the Scenic Urban Waterway Law. It defined what a scenic urban waterway was, and it identified 3 of those across the whole state of Wisconsin. One of them is our Fox River, one of them is the Fox River that empties into Green Bay, and the other is stretches of the Rock River in the middle of the state. And after identifying the scenic urban waterways, the law assigned responsibilities to DNR, that they are supposed to manage and maintain these in order to improve their usage as a aquatic recreational place, to improve tourism and bring out-of-state people into the area. The responsibilities that the Wisconsin DNR is supposed to have is to provide active leadership in the development of a practical management policy. Now, this is all legalese. This comes right out of the statute. Consult with other state agencies and planning committees and organizations. That would be the town of Waterford, Racine County, the WWMD, the Southeast Fox River Commission, groups like that. They're supposed to collaborate with municipal governing bodies and their development committees or boards in producing a mutually acceptable program for the preservation, protection, and enhancement of the rivers and watershed. The Wisconsin DNR is supposed to administer the management program. The Wisconsin DNR is supposed to seek the cooperation of municipal officials and private landowners in implementing land use practices to accomplish the objectives of the management policy. And they're also responsible for being a coordinator of the activities under this section. This law is still in force today. Our take on this law is the dredging project should be the responsibility and funded by the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources and the state, subject to input from bodies such as the WWMD, the town of Waterford, the village of Waterford, Racine County, and the Southeast Fox River Commission. The second way is we can get it paid for with grants. There is grant funding available, like Barbara described the grant that Stephanie raised. However, securing grant funding at this level is not easy. And for the most part, grant funding is conditioned on critical items. One of which is and I should back up, grants can come from the federal government, the state government, not-for-profit organizations, major corporations. There's lots of different sources. Most of the grants that are out there require matching participation on the part of the person or organization that receives the grant. So, for example, a lot of the state grants require 50% matching coming from the organization that's receiving the grant. If we would be fortunate enough to be able to fund our project with grants, we're still going to wind up having to raise half the money or some part of the money ourselves. There's also a requirement of prerequisites that have to be met before you can even apply for the grant. One of which is you have to have that matching money on hand before you start. The next is you have to have all your permits. You have to have all your contracts in place. You have to be ready to start performing the project at the time you're applying for the grant. So what makes it hard? Getting grants is a lot harder than the other alternatives we have. The third alternative is the one that we're all trying to avoid, and that's funding by the WWMD, which means the money comes from the riparian owners. You all should know that the WWMD can't just decide to undertake this project and assess all of you the money to do it. We have to have a meeting, either the regular annual meeting, or we have to declare a special meeting. And those meetings have notice requirements. We have to post what it is we're trying to do, and then all of the riparian owners and anybody who is an eligible voter living on a riparian property can come to that meeting and they can vote. We can't do this, we can't go down this path without the cooperation, the agreement, and the support of all the riparian owners. We can borrow. We can do a bond issue, raise the money. Again, we have to have your approval to do the bond issue. We raise the money and pay it off over a period of years. That would likely go on longer than the 3 years of the project. We can do special assessments. That requires approval of our plans by a majority vote of those riparian owners and electors present at that meeting that I described to you. Once you decide that we're going to go down that path, then we have to determine the entire cost of the district of the work to be done. We then apportion that total cost on all property in the riparian property district. And that, by the way, includes the town and the village and the county. In other words, if they have real estate, they're going to be subject to the same assessment that a homeowner has. We cannot assess the state or federal government for that. We are allowed the latitude to determine the benefits to each parcel of land from the project, considering the size of the project, proximity to the waterway, present potential use of the parcel, economic benefit. There's lots of different standards. After the benefits are determined, the assessments will be made in the total amount equal to the cost to the district of the project. So there's three ways that we can get this done. We can try to get the state recognizing the responsibility under the Scenic Urban Waterway Law. We can try to get grants, or we have to do it ourselves. We need your help. If we do nothing, the sedimentation is going to continue. In 10 to 20 years, a lot of our property, the waterfront property, will become marshes. Once that's happened, we effectively lose 25 to 30, 33% of the value of our property. So if your property is currently assessed at, let's say, $200,000, that means essentially $60,000 of the value of your property is going to evaporate. Now, this is going to have an effect not just on riparian owners, it's going to have an effect on all the people in Racine County. Because we all know, like in the past 5 years, when real estate values fell, did your property taxes fall? The county, the schools, the towns, the villages, they're going to continue spending at the same rate. So that money is going to have to be made up in other places. That means the people in Racine County are going to be paying more property taxes to make up for what's not coming from the riparian owners. That also means that the person who really doesn't have, there's no muck in front of his property like the people on the main Michigan Lake, they're still going to suffer because the guys that are in Buena Lake or other places where they do have muck, if you don't fix the problem, the property values are going to be affected and they'll be picking up a bigger tax bill than the people whose property is becoming waterfront. So, we've worked this long and hard, and we now want your support. We provided approximately 100 packets of information to distribute to each of you as you leave. Now, I think there's like 200 people in here, so we don't have enough.
We have extra.
Yeah, we do.
We printed extras, we're good.
Okay. These packets contain a listing of the appropriate public officials that need to know your position. They contain pre-printed letters and envelopes for the four most important public officials. State Senator Mary Lazich, Assemblyman David Craig, Governor Scott Walker, and Kathy Stepp, who is the secretary or the head of the Wisconsin DNR. If we're going to convince the state of Wisconsin to pick up the ball, these officials need to know our feelings, your feelings. They need to know, as their constituents, that you recognize this law that they put on the books 30 years ago, and they need to do what the law says. This is not supposed to be, or rather, it's supposed to be a responsibility of the Wisconsin DNR, and we don't want the WWMD riparian owners to bear the burden of what should be the DNR. We're going to be providing you with many more copies of these letters without the envelopes. Take the time to share them with your neighbors, your friends. Anybody that's an eligible voter in the state of Wisconsin has an interest in this, especially those that are close. You can also find downloadable and printable copies of these letters and the contact information. Oh, that's right. The packet of information is also going to have the addresses and phone numbers of not just those four elected officials, but a bunch more people here in Wisconsin. I think that's all I have. I'm ready for questions.
Okay, if you got any questions, Margaret and Stephanie will pick them up. While they're doing that, I want to introduce one more person. Jim Pindell, can you stand? Jim Pindell is head of the FRC, the Fox River Commission. They have contributed, oh my God, I can't even add it up, $59,000, $7,000 to our waterway to fund some of the runoff projects. They meet once a month in Vernon. We have the Cause, we have Fox River, and we have the WWMD. So, wanted to thank Jim, and everybody should thank him for their support in our district. So. The other one is Margaret over here. Margaret is our IT person. We're very, very lucky to have her, and as a group, we just have phenomenal volunteers. And Margaret she knows everything about the website. If you visited it, you've noticed the changes, and they're all positive. So thank you, Margaret.
Okay, so I guess that answers the first question. Is the FRC part of this project? Yes, they are. When will the referendum be scheduled to determine whether this project is approved by landowners?
First of all, it's not a referendum.
All right, she's got to repeat the question.
When will the referendum be scheduled to determine whether this project is approved by landowners?
It's not a referendum. It's essentially just like the annual meeting, which if you guys were interested enough to come today, you probably come to the annual meetings. The annual meeting is in September. I don't know if we will have everything finalized such that we can decide to do that by the September meeting. You people can't imagine the difficulty that we have in how much this target moves. The Wisconsin DNR, one day they think we should be doing it one way, another day they think we should be doing it another way. And we have to get a permit from them. We have to satisfy their requirements. So it's really hard. It's possible that we could get everything done in time for September. It's not likely. I will tell you, with regards to this scenic urban waterway law, the state of Wisconsin and its agencies start preparing their budgets this September. They do a budget that's good for 2 years, and that budget will be enacted around the first of the year. So if we're going to try to convince our senators, our congressmen, the other elected officials that we want them to pick up the ball, we need to get to them as soon as possible, certainly before September.
And then a little follow-up. It says stop spending until the project is approved.
I'm sorry?
This owner's concern is to stop spending until the project is approved. Is that possible?
No.
Not really, because we have to hire the companies, like Great, to do the engineering information, so we can then go to the DNR and say, here's what we want to do, and then we get the permit from them. So you can't not spend. There's nothing we can do about that.
Are households who have lake access, are they going to be excluded from the financial costs? Yes or no? If not, why not? Homes that just have lake access, non-riparian owners, are they excluded from these costs?
No. Well, if we can get the state to pay for it, everybody doesn't have to pay for it. If the WWMD has to wind up paying for it, then all riparian owners, all people that own property that abuts the water will have to participate in the cost.
Access. Across the street, on the other side.
No questions from the audience.
So the concern is anybody who does not live on the water, will they share in the cost?
No, I think I can answer that question. When the district was formed, you have approximately... You have approximately 1,000 riparian owners. The way that it works is the county gives us a map if you have water. If you live on the water, you're taxed. People in Waterford don't pay anything. It's only the district is formed up of the riparian owners. Now, that also doesn't give them the right to vote, so the decision is up to the riparian owners. If you are taxed for water property, whether you have land, no house, whatever, if you have use of the waterway and you are taxed for it, you will be assessed should there be any cost in the district.
My subdivision has a boat launch and a pier.
No questions. No questions.
If somebody can write a clear question.
If you have a question, write it down, and we won't be able to answer everybody at once.
Let me try saying the question and see if you guys agree with the question. There are places where there are subdivisions that have a single launch or some access into the lake. Will the people in those subdivisions that don't have the riparian property of their own, but they have a lake access through that, would they be assessed? Yeah. Is that right?
The easy answer to that question is, look at your last property tax bill. If there was a line item on there for the Wisconsin, or the Waterford Waterway Management District, if you had an assessment there, then if this project gets carried through to fruition and the WWMD winds up paying for it, then you will be part of the people that get to vote on that, and you will be part of the people who will be paying for that.
But if we don't, if we get the scenic urban waterway law funded, we won't. We want to fund the scenic urban waterway law. We want that.
There is favorable interest on the part of State Senator Lazich. And I think if she sees a lot of people behind it, she'll recruit more support for it. So it's really important.
Right.
You sign that letter, you put your name and your address on the letter, you take it to the post office and mail it. Next question.
Well, I guess a follow-up, how many riparian owners would be responsible for the cost? There are a lot of questions to that.
There are approximately
1,022.
1,022 properties. So it's about that. And if you want to do the math, if it costs 8.4 to 10.4 million, and I'll just use 900 or 9 million to round it, and 1,000 property owners will all be paying approximately $9,000. If we can get the state to do the right thing with the scenic urban waterway law, we pay less or nothing.
Which answers quite a few more questions. How much does it cost per owner? So there were a lot of questions to that topic. Dredging bays at the expense of all landowners can be compared to paving private roads at taxpayers' expense, which isn't done. Will owners on bays pay more since a very limited number of people will benefit?
It will be spread probably equally across all owners. As I said, it's the responsibility of the commissioners, the people that Barbara introduced you to look at the benefits that are garnered by each property that's there, to look at the size of the property, to look at the economic value of the property. There's lots of standards. It could be a straight line as well. Just 1,000 owners, you spread it equally, 1/1,000 to the cost.
But if we get the scenic urban waterway law funded, we won't have to go there. We won't have to go there.
As you can see, we're a big fan of that. We're trying really hard to not make it a burden on the district members.
If I own more than one property on the waterway, do I get more than one vote?
No. By the same token, in a household, I don't think a husband and wife both get a vote, do they?
Yes.
They do? Okay, they do.
How much has been spent on the project to date?
That's a hard one. I would only have a guess. I think you can go on the budget on the
I would suggest, I don't know the answer to that. I'm pretty sure that you can find that. The budget, I think, is on the Waterford WWMD website. In case you don't know where that is, it's www.waterfordwwmd.com. There is no hyphen between Waterford and WWMD.
Depending on who pays for the project, will the project differ?
No. The project, right now, we're going to do just what Brian described to you. He didn't go into all the detail, but there's a lot of detail. And whatever we do will eventually be, the Wisconsin DNR has the control over to what extent what gets done.
That's it?
That's all the questions we have.
So, Barb, you're next.
Okay, in January, I made a telephone call, and I called Kathy Stepp. Kathy Stepp, Secretary of the DNR of the state of Wisconsin. We met with Kathy Stepp. We explained to her our project. We wanted a better working relationship with the DNR. We wanted to tell them, in southeastern Wisconsin, if this project goes through, it's the largest project ever done in southeastern Wisconsin. Whenever you're trying to sell something, thanks Margaret for bringing this to my attention, everybody's got to win. The DNR will win because it's almost a prototype for people to come throughout the state on what you can do. We're not the only ones with these problems. You're going to win, the town's going to win, the economy's going to win, everybody's going to win. So I went to Kathy Stepp, we met, and I asked for a lead person from the DNR. And she appointed Eric Nitschke, who is head of southeastern Wisconsin DNR. Works right under Kathy Stepp. In the meantime, very supportive. In the meantime, you can all give Gary Hansen a round of applause because he's the one that found 30.275 scenic urban waterways on the internet. So this is our mission. In the middle of July, I have a meeting with Kathy Stepp, myself, Mike Bruin, who's the legislative liaison between the DNR and the legislator, Mary Lassich, and David Craig. I plan to go into that meeting asking for them to fund the 30.275. I hope this shows you that every single one of us that's on this board is in the same position you are. But we feel, as far as cost goes, we feel that this is the responsibility of the DNR. I'm going for all of it. Whether I get all of it or not. Okay, now it's your turn. 7 board members, probably 15 volunteers, have been working for you for 12 years. Mike's tried every avenue to try and control the weeds. People have gone to meetings. I had 4 meetings this week. Now it's your turn. The letters that they're talking about have to be in the mail before I go to my meeting with Kathy Stepp. You have to pass those letters out to everybody. I don't care if they live on the Waterway, because it's going to affect that person in town who, David Craig said to me, you know, the people in Waterford, they don't really care about the water. That's not one of their priorities. Well, they don't realize that if we don't pay 28% higher in taxes, they're going to pay it. So, and they probably use the Waterway when I tell you we have 4,000 boats coming onto the Waterway. So there's copies of those letters. We didn't know how many people to expect today. Get those letters in the mail. Also, there's a copy of their information with their email addresses. Send them the letter. Send them the email. The letter's going to go to the governor. The letter's going to go to Mary, to David. Who's the 4th person? Kathy Stepp. Because when I walk into that meeting, I'm your representative, and I need you behind me. And you can't sit back, and you can't do the rumors. If you don't want to pay for it, and you want them to follow the law and fund this project, we need you. Now, so with that being said, You know all the board members. You know we're all here. I cannot thank you enough for coming out today. I hope you're leaving with a better perspective of what's going to be done. I hope you're leaving with the idea that if I have a question, I'm not going to go to the girl at the beauty shop and ask her, or the guy when I went to the fish fry. I'm going to go to the commissioners and ask them. We are trying desperately to communicate with you, but you have to communicate with us.
You say one final.
So, thank you again for coming.
I want to say one final.
No.
Yes, I have to say something about our committee. Yes. Yes.
I hate to tell you, it's my husband.
Now you know who the boss is. Margaret is. I just want to take this opportunity to thank, as co-chairman of the Ecosystem Restoration Committee, along with Andre Spigna. I'd like to thank John Bostrom, who originally was the chair. He had some heart problems. He's here today. And thank him for all his work. And also for our committee, who's on the committee, is Dick Koset, who was a former chairman and commissioner. Dick is in the back there. And I'd like to thank Paul Kling, who is on the committee. And I'd like to thank Grave, of course, all the hard work and that, all the meetings we've had, and the thousands of hours of meetings, and Jim Pindell, who has done a lot of our engineering and time studies, and of course Andres, he did all the scientific ones for all the how long it will take to fill in. And I want to congratulate them, because Southeast Wisconsin Regional Planning Commission put that plan out for us that came out in 2012 in May, which everybody has a figure of $20 to $25 million to do this, which is what estimated at. In Madison, they had it at $57 million. We have managed to bring it down to the figure we have right here, which is more than half of what was projected. So I think they deserve a big hand of applause.
Can you hear me? Can I tell you one more thing? Margaret, who I told you is so good on our education, she wants to spend money.
I do.
You're going to get a postcard now every month with an update. It's going to be a large postcard. You're going to get the newsletter. You're going to know what's going on. We meet the 4th Thursday.
Check the website.
Check the website. That's where your information is. There's no reason for anybody to go with a question unanswered. Pardon me?
Come to meetings.
We have a meeting the 4th Thursday of every month, but we're trying to communicate. So again, now we need you. Thank you for coming. Have a great day.